Joe diGenova, Victoria Tunsing are with us. diGenova and Tunsing, welcome both of you back to the program. Victoria, let's start with you. Get your take on all this.
Well, the new media standard is very, very interesting, at least for Republicans. It's that you can say John Smith raped somebody. We can't prove it. We don't have anybody else. We don't have any witnesses. So we're telling you, you know, what our problems are with our story. But nevertheless, John Smith raped somebody. I mean, that's what the media is going with. Sean, it's really important that your listeners know about what happens here in Washington when there's a high publicity investigation, because I was involved in one in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan's CIA director, Bill Casey. It was all over the papers, how soon we all forget about these things. But I was with the Senate Intelligence Committee, and we got such far-ranging, bizarre accusations about Casey. Bill Casey met me in a park and held me up with a gun. Bill Casey took all my stocks and sold them and kept the money for himself. I mean, they were just radically out wild. And that happens all the time in these investigations. And you know what? We didn't make any of them public, and even the Democrats back then did not make them public. And yet we have Kamala Harris. I'm told she's a lawyer. She was the Attorney General of California. She's supposed to know due process. She released an anonymous Jane Doe accusation, that's how the person signed it, about Brett Kavanaugh committing some lurid sex acts. Is there no decorum left in the U.S. Senate anymore? Aren't they going to sanction her in any way?
You know, Alan Dershowitz was saying that in the case of Julie Swetnick in particular, that if in fact she made these statements and they're provably false, that he would want a full, complete investigation into perjury allegations. Joe, I don't know what the law enforcement should do. I do know this. I know that we have now examined every single case. In every case, there's no corroboration. In every case, there is multiple inconsistencies. In the last case, Julie Swetnick, there are so many inconsistencies, it is mind-numbing that NBC would ever air that interview. But they aired it anyway. The eyewitnesses or the witnesses she mentioned, one is dead, one doesn't even know who she is, and they can't get an answer from the other two. And now, last minute, because they're desperate, now they want the FBI investigating ice-throwing incidents in high school.
Yeah. Well, I think what has to happen with Julie Swetnick is that the Senate committee, after the confirmation vote occurs, needs to make a criminal referral to the Justice Department or the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia to investigate her for obstruction of a congressional proceeding by submitting a false affidavit and for perjurious written testimony. Very easy to investigate, and it has to be done in order to send a signal to everybody out there that you cannot simply make false statements to a congressional committee in a confirmation process to get yourself publicity. It is very, very important that Ms. Swetnick be investigated by a federal grand jury to act as a deterrent against others from making false accusations. There is no substantiation for her story. There is no substantiation for Ms. Ramirez's story. And I just want to say something that I know probably, Sean, you don't agree with. She has repeatedly lied, as like her lawyers did not tell her that the committee was willing to come to California to interview her. That is a lie. Her lawyers did tell her that. No good lawyer would never communicate
Joe,
that offer.
I got to tell you, I don't think they told her. If you remember in that moment when Professor Ford was asked, when I forgot, maybe it was Lindsey Graham or whoever it was, said, well, we offered to go to you. Maybe it was Senator Grassley. I think it was Senator Grassley. And then she said, there was genuine surprise. Now, remember, Dianne Feinstein was working behind the scenes to get a radical left-wing activist, a resistor, as a lawyer. This is Deborah Katz. Deborah Katz, by the way, who said, well, Paula Jones only spent 10 or 12 minutes with Bill Clinton. It wasn't a big deal. That wouldn't constitute sexual harassment in the workplace, and also defended in the case of Al Franken. But I saw genuine shock and surprise. And she goes, well, I didn't know that, but that was very nice of you if you offered that. I didn't know. I believe
they should be referred to the D.C. bar then for violation of professional rules.
I may very well come to conclude that eventually, and I'm perfectly happy to accept it. I can buy that. And I'll tell you something that really bothers me about her story. And as an old prosecutor who tried sex crimes cases, here's the one thing about her story, besides everything else we've talked about that doesn't make any sense. Any victim in a situation like that goes to where people are for safety. Now, why does her story not include her going to those people? Because if she had done that, if she literally, if what she says occurred, and if she had gone to those people, guess what? They would have remembered it. In order for her to have a story that holds up without anybody knowing about it, she has to leave the house.
I don't know, though, and look, maybe, because we're talking about, we all know that there are real evil predators. There are people that do murder and rape innocent people. There are people that will drug and rape people, i.e., look at the Bill Cosby case. We know that and this is why I think, to the Republicans' credit, they took these allegations and charges seriously. They handled it professionally. They afforded every accommodation, which was the right thing to do. But for the Democrats, they just now have pushed this so far into any allegation, no matter how many inconsistencies, no matter no evidence, no matter no corroboration whatsoever. And we saw that they hated the guy from the beginning. So I don't know what victims remember or don't remember, Joe, and I don't know how they act or react. I would assume it's probably people react differently. Like you go to a funeral, some people are crying, some people are laughing.
I was perfectly happy to accept anything that she had to say, and I listened to her testimony carefully at the time and his, and then I went back and I looked at it repeatedly, and it may very well be that she believes everything she said. The problem is there's not a scintilla of evidence to corroborate it. And conveniently enough, everything that could have happened that would have made her story corroborable is non-existent. That just doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen.
Sean, let me just say, we make our living trying to look at stories like this and picking them apart or supporting them. There's another problem with her story. Listen, she said that there was music on in the upstairs bedroom. That's kind of weird because the party was downstairs, but let's take it. And they turned the music up so nobody could hear her. And then she locks herself in the bathroom and she can hear them talking going downstairs. Well, you think these guys that had just turned the music up so no one could hear went over and then said, let's turn it down? I mean, there's just so many flaws in what she does say.
I just don't know what. Look, it's very hard. I don't want to get into that whole aspect of it. I got to take a break. We'll come back more with Victoria Tunsing, Joe diGenova next. As we continue with Joe diGenova, Victoria Tunsing of diGenova and Tunsing, as we continue from the swamp, Washington, D.C., here's what we do know. We do know that if we're trying to be fair, and I think the Republicans were fair, and I think they took it seriously.
Oh, but boy, were they fair.
Agreed.
Boy, were they fair.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think you ever go wrong going the extra mile, especially with something this serious. But if we do know that she, in the case of Professor Ford, she didn't know a day of the week, a location, how she got to or from the location where the crime took place, no corroborating evidence, no forensic evidence. If you don't know where it took place, you can't even go back 36 years later. And I'm an avid watcher of forensic files. What they can now do and solve unresolved crimes from decades gone by is pretty amazing. And in sworn statements under penalty of felony, every one of the people that she mentioned would say something, said just the opposite or just don't remember it. So there's in that sense, that is over for that case as far as I'm concerned, unless we're going to just believe guilt by accusation.
But the Democrats are. That's what they're doing. The Democrats say now it's never enough. They want more FBI. But a week now is not enough.
Even though the week was proposed by Senator Coons, who has now, as you can tell, disappeared. You can't find him now. He's on a milk carton.
Yeah, no, he's missing in action after he got everything he wanted. What did Jeff Flake get out of this? Hey, look, I don't think anybody can predict with the FBI now handing over their findings in the Kavanaugh probe. they still have not interviewed Christine Ford, but I would imagine the FBI doesn't need to interview Christine Ford. They have all of her testimony, don't they?
She's testified under oath for a very long period of time. No interview by the FBI is going to add a thing.
Yeah. Well, it gets very, very tough and very scary, but I will say this. If we lose due process, if we lose the presumption of innocence, if it's guilt by accusation, this is not America anymore.
Oh, only for Republicans, Sean. Only for Republicans.
Yeah, well, if they were consistent, they'd be demanding an FBI investigation into Keith Ellison and Juanita Broderick's claim of rape Bill Clinton, because it's not that far away from this time frame.
Or Bob Menendez, who's accused of having sex with underage prostitutes in a villa in the D.R.
But it's interesting that they don't want to investigate any of these things, and their silence is deafening because it's not about the issue. It's about power and politics, sadly, as usual. All right, thank you both, Joe diGenova, Victoria Tunson.